Nah, another draft physics video presentation. Similar kind of words, actually. But anyway, well, pick one. Tired. Anyway, alright, some comments and then probably some more of this, whatever, wacky space kind of conversation. So I think I'll be done with it after this video. Get back to the real physics. The physics they should be spending more time on. Like all these people who know there's black holes and know they swirl and know they make waves and know they do this and know they do all this crap they know, and they don't know how magnets work. They ought to tie up the loose ends, in all of their other assumptions before they start making new assumptions. But anyway, mainstream physics. Clock broken equals time broken. Hilarious. It does seem like there should always be a little bit of a fact check, just a little bit of work to say something like, well, moving the speed of light doesn't mean you're actually moving to a location, so, you don't get somewhere. You're just moving faster than the speed of light, which means you're going faster than slow, by some definition. It's not like you're really going faster than time, you're just going faster than something that's moving in space a certain slow speed, even though light's an incredibly fast speed. It's some percentage of less than instantaneous, right? So you're going less than instantaneous. So even if I go 1,000,000 times faster than the speed of light, I'm still going less than instantaneous't. So I can only arrive at another location at some point that is the present. I mean, I can't arrive somewhere and it be some other thing than the present for the entire universe. There's a present for the entire universe. I mean, there's rocks on top of hills on Mars or something that are just going to fall off right now. And they fell off right now. They didn't fall off some other time in some other place or some other thing. It's now, the present. And so if I go faster than the speed of light, all I'm doing is catching up to images of the past. So, like, let's say I go twice the speed of light and took 20 years, and then I turned on my radio in my spaceship. I can listen to old radio stations from Earth, stuff that was broadcast in the 70s or something, or the 50s. So I can get an image. I might even get some image files. I could go back just 10 years and I could get images that are being projected off of Earth, electronic images. But I'm not visiting any location in time. I'm just looking at light that's moving slower than me, images that are moving through space slower than I'm moving. Okay, so I can catch up to them and look at them. But that's all I can see is images. I can't actually go to the past, so I can't get there. I can't do some tricky flying thing in space and get to some other place in space than locations that are existing in the present. So I'll always arrive in the present wherever I arrive, and all I can do is view places as they were in the past. So right now we're viewing stars as they looked. We're not seeing them as they are. We're seeing as they were. And we can go really fast and try to get those images, 1 day old images. But 1 day old images are really far away. So we have to travel a very long time, very fast, to see 1 day old images. But by the time we actually get to the place, it's going to be the present. And not the present we left at, it's going to be the present presently, whatever time it is. So that the clock that the universe is running on, because of the standardization of the speed of light, just means that all the functions of atoms and stuff are always going to be the same no matter where you go. So you really can't, there's no idea of slowing down, because atomic clocks run on nuclear decay, and that can be fucked up by velocity. Well, the fact that photons aren't fucked up by velocity means that the other functions that atoms have aren't going to get that fucked up. So there's lots of functions that just can't be slowed down. They're not going to, I'm going really slow. Well, the atom's not going to be doing that because the photons are still going the same speed. So at least somebody should be making those arguments. Every time somebody makes one of these spiels about time dimensions and all that crap. There should just be a little bit of counter argument stuck on there, a little counterpoint that just points out you don't have to believe that crap. There's no evidence for that crap. The only thing there's evidence for is that there's an association between velocity and certain ways things break. Things break when you give them a lot of velocity, especially acceleration. Acceleration is really, really rough. And then if I accelerate you really fast, and put you in heavy, heavy gravity, you will in fact smush. You'll just smush. You'll turn into goo. You won't be like Rubber Man or something where you're just compressed a little and then you pop back up and you're all okay. No, your bones will crush. Everything will crush. They'll just smash into pulp, and you'll be a bloody mess, a gooey bag, inside of a little skin bag maybe. But yeah, that's what you'll be. And there won't be any, I'm going to walk around and look around and enjoy my adventure, in incredible gravity or incredible acceleration. So all of this is just baby talk. To say that any of this is survivable or any of this has any, it's like a real dimensional trip. You're getting on a train where there's special rules. The whole point of what Einstein is saying is basically saying there are no special rules. You're fucked. Because photons are always going to be moving the same speed. There's always going to be the same number of them. You can't change any of that stuff. You're going to get hit by them. Whether you're capable of seeing yourself getting hit by them is maybe another thing, but you will be hit by them. You will be sunburned. You will be all these things that are going to happen to you. You're going to age and die. All those things are still going to happen because photons are still interacting. The radiation is still interacting, and just because some of your atoms are decaying slower, so what? It's not going to make enough of a difference to save you. So anyway, just horseshit. It's just garbage. It's just junk science. It's pseudoscience. It's make-believe. It's fantasy. It just shouldn't be qualified as hard, real physics. Anyway, whoa, we can be time-traveling, teleporting adventurers. Well, teleporting is a whole nother subject, but what are the consequences of that in terms of the time delay while you're being transmitted as data? Clearly if you do teleportation, again, you can't change anything except you could arrive at the future because it took so long for your data to get somewhere, so you could arrive at some other location a lot later than you left. But the place you left also, time happened. So time happened everywhere in the universe. The only place it didn't happen is because you were mixed into data. You weren't experiencing anything. You were unconscious. You went to sleep, essentially. You were out of the game for a while you were being teleported. That's the only thing that changes. So if you teleport yourself back home, you'll never go back home to the back home you were at. You'll go to some back home that's long past. Welcome to the fun universe. Imagine being immature enough to project your Doctor Who fantasies into reality. Well, apparently, all those Doctor Who fantasies are created by people who have some knowledge of physics, and they just play this game where instead of explaining how magnets work, they waste their time having little fantasy adventures in, Battlestar Galactica or whatever. Okay, so this is some idiot called Spread Love. Life is short. Oh, that's just so special. Yeah, right. Oh, God. Look, the idea of being nice is fine. I don't have anything. I'm generally speaking a nice person. I don't go kicking people for the fun of it or any of that kind of crap. I wait till they do something horrible, and then I don't even kick them then. I just give them a kicking face. I would have kicked you if it was not going to cause a hassle. I give them that kind of face. But anyway, just whatever. All right, Miles Mathis does some excellent research. Yes, again, like pseudoscientist, he's obsessed with crap that just couldn't goddamn matter. Let's figure out whether you have some Jew in you. So, for whatever reason, and he's not because he's anti-Semitic. He just wants to find out for the hell of the fun of it. Okay, you're interested. I can't tell you how uninterested I am. And he is doing it way before other guys claiming that he stole it from him. Stole what? This idiotic notions of truther theories about all kinds of conspiracies that would be just physically impossible. Don't make any sense. They replaced Stephen Hawking's with some other guy who had ALS. Yeah, sure they did. I mean, just too stupid. Okay, his work is accurate. In what sense? It's accurate to say, why does the crippled guy dye his hair? Crippled people shouldn't dye their hair. Oh, that's really sensible reasoning. I tell you, you can't escape that. For those of us that check his work and have already been researching it for decades, like what part of his work again? I mean, yes, sometimes what he says is accurate, but what is he, 50-50? 60-40? Do you think pi equals 4? You think that was good research he did? Oh, well, I'll research the equation, and I'll use the equation for converting arc seconds into degrees to explain as a velocity equation. No, sorry, that's not going to work, idiot. It's the wrong equation, fuckhead. Your video and comments here remind me of a statement I heard once. Reverting to name calling. So again, what name did I call him? Did I call him Mystical Mathis or... what are you talking about? What name did I call him besides maybe idiot or liar or kook? Those aren't names. Those are descriptive terms. Suggests you are defensive and therefore find my opinion valid. Hilarious. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's just hilarious. So if you criticize me, it means you agree with me. There. That's one of my great truthisms. Any criticism means you love me. So anybody who insults me, oh, they really love me. Oh, fuck, you're so pathetic. Alright, well, this guy we can just block because this is too stupid. Yeah, you're just too stupid for an adult conversation. I'm afraid so, little sunflower person. God damn. This world is so broken. Bringing up scientifically, another kooker, another nutter from the Trutherville. Of God loves us. That's why he didn't tell us any of this stuff. And that's why I have to tell you. I, the prophet, the scientific prophet. God tells me, and I shall tell you. It's such a special mechanism. I'm supposed to have this personal relationship with God, and I have to have it through you. Fuck that. Alright, that's cool. You watched and insulted for all of the explanation of what the world thinks. Now, I said you made a video saying, I've proven God did it, or some kind of crap like that. You never got to the fucking point. You never got to your evidence, okay? You wasted a whole bunch of time misparaphrasing your opposing argument, creating straw men. So, fuck you. Yeah, you wasted my time then. Then you never bothered watching the proof. Well, where was the proof? I'm sorry, I didn't see it. That's right. And then your part 2 video was 4 seconds long. So what do you want me to say? Except fuck you. Everybody's going to get what they deserve. Says you again. You promise, huh? Oh, gee. Scientifically, guy promises that there will be some sort of doling out of meaningful deserve. I mean, getting what you deserve really only works in a system that still has reward and punishment in it. Once there's no reward and punishment, there's no prevention. People can't learn from other people's mistakes. Then getting what you deserve doesn't matter anymore. It's of no value. Punishment or retribution or getting what you deserve in the fun way, where the bad gets bad. Only works when other bad people can see bad people getting bad. That's when it only works. Once that doesn't happen anymore, then there's no point. That I do know. Yes, you do know it through your magical mechanisms of spiritual blah 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 blah. Rubbish. Just rubbish. I don't know if it's bothered wasting my time removing it. I mean, that's his counter argument. That's the substance of his defense of his I'm talking for God, and this is the best he can do. Okay, he's declared himself a spokesperson for God, and this is the best he can come up with. So this is the best God can do. When God makes a prophet, this is the best he can do. It's pretty pathetic. So maybe I'll leave it as an example of just how lame. Even if there is a God, fuck him in the ass till dead because he's an idiot. He's got this idiot talking for him. God, no, we really should have a coup then. You know, God's a drunk or a fool or whatever. He's something that needs to be replaced. He's far from perfect if this is his voice on earth. Yeah. No, fuck it. Alright, so enough of that crap. Alright, so, yeah, so we'll do a little more of the Kip Thorne thing just for the fun of it. Let's see where he goes. I haven't watched this video in its entirety. I guess I saw some pieces of it, but I think he just goes babbling on about all this, how science is demonstrating that everything is wacky and stupid when, no, all the evidence points in one direction. 99% of the evidence, and the only percent that doesn't is usually experiments for which they've projected capacities that are well beyond their ability to project having those capacities, like gravitational waves. So they'll use, well, we saw black holes, binary stars doing this, 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 and this, and we did blah, 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 so that exists, and now they'll project something else existing based on that, a consequence to something they made up. And that's how all this physics keeps getting wackier and wackier, is they start believing their own bullshit and create a new foundation to build more bullshit on. And so it's just a giant house of bullshit cards. And eventually it will fall. I mean, it should fall right now because I'm here to do the pushing over. I'm here to blow it down. And but they won't let me. They won't let me close enough to just show just how weak it all is.
We understand relativity theory, we understand quantum theory, we know they have to be integrated, but pretty much we know...
Oh, no, we know that your choice is pretty much going to have to be one of them has to go or both of them have to go. That's what you really know. You know one of them's a wrong answer because the two things really just don't work. Bent space and virtual photons just doesn't work. So you're going to have to figure out whether they're both wrong or one of them is actually right. I would argue they're both wrong in a sense, okay? I mean, quantum mechanics is closer to the truth than something as silly as saying space is bent, which is saying absolutely nothing because it's not really bent in 3 dimensions, it's a convergence. So you ought to understand something's converging, so if you call the something virtual photons, then you have some hope. Then you can meld the two things by understanding that the quanta comes in a form, and then it's the crudest form is gravity, and then the more sophisticated form of when it's segregated for its polarity is magnetism, and everything in between is just putting those little bits of quanta in arrangements, little frequencies. And that's it. So if you had any kind of brains, you could figure this out. But, I mean, it's just as simple as I just pointed out. So it's so fucking simple. And it's right. The truth is sitting right there in front of you to grab. I mean, I didn't have to do anything all that special to find it. Shit.
Oh, all that's going on. But when you look at the future, what opportunities do you see for new physics?
New. Where do you go with this nonsense? New what? New double wormholes, singularity wormholes? I don't know. You know what wacky crap are you going to come up with that doesn't have anything to do with reality? Like this stupid movie the guy was the science advisor on. You know, where solar panels that produce 50 watts of energy keep a big metal plane in the air for 10 years? Oh yeah, sure they do. With magic batteries, of course.
Ideas to emerge.
Let me approach this by talking about old physics. Because
that we've completely bastardized and turned into rubbish when it's as solid as it could be. Yes, Benjamin Franklin got plus and minus wrong. There's a few little mistakes, but most of it's pretty solid shit.
It sets the context. Newton gave us his laws of gravity.
Right, and there are laws you can't break. They're solid as they can be. All you can do is add to them a little bit. You could say that Newton was missing a couple of variables. And just as I pointed out, yeah, his equation is a little bit imperfect because the forces are two different forces. The gravity you make is different than the gravity you're in from something else's stuff. And it really should be understood as that. Okay, you're making an effect on the universe, and you're in the effect that something else is affecting the universe, and that's the net product. But the net product isn't what you produce. It really requires two bodies. It's not a singular thing, gravity.
His laws of gravity say that the Earth and the Moon attract each other through a force, a gravitational force. It's an action at a distance force. The Earth here, far away from the Moon, pulls on the Moon.
So again, he doesn't say that. So I mean, Newton just says it. Yes, he doesn't posit explanation. He says it overtly. So he's clearly not saying it's instantaneous. He doesn't opine on how fast the force moves because he doesn't understand the force. He doesn't understand what's causing it. He just understands there's an effect. I can't give you the cause. I can just give you a precise definition of how the effect does the affecting. And yes, he did speculate. Okay, he did like particle gravity, Faddeus's gravity, and he Huygens and other theories. He considered them, and obviously none of them were complete enough. They didn't have enough of the answers. Enough. They didn't answer enough of the questions. They didn't have a response to enough of the questions, put it that way, for him to be satisfied that was the explanation. As has been pointed out, particle gravity, Mach gravity, which works perfectly, an external particle force works really well, a moving force, little bits moving. The speed of light works. Ultra-mundane particles, as stated by Lesage, I think that was his term. But regardless, it works, but you have this drag problem. But then you can do some explaining and say, well, in the modern era, we know there's electrons and protons that are doing the moving. We know they have to move for the atom to move. And that electrons and protons do, in fact, experience drag. They don't fly forever in the universe. I can't just poke an electron into space and it just travels forever. This doesn't happen. Electrons and protons are dragged by the ether, so to speak, the field of energy. So it's not really a problem. We just have to explain why complex material objects are capable of motoring themselves against that drag. Why do they have the energy to overcome drag? But anyway, so yes, there's these problems. And the same thing, there's wave theory problems, and you say, well, how do you get straight lines out of these waves, blah, 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 lots of things that make it a broken theory. But again, this attitude as if their theory is broken. No, their theory is incomplete. Just as incomplete as your wacky theories are now, okay, in the sense that you don't have good evidence. You can't make a hard-drawn conclusion because you don't have enough information. Newton didn't know about electrons and protons. And do you think if he did, he'd do what you assholes are doing? I don't think he would be. I think he'd be saying, you people are jumping to conclusions that go way beyond the evidence you have.
And makes the moon go in orbit around the Earth. Going in orbit to prevent...
A very technical definition. Makes it go around in orbit. No, bends its straight line into a crooked line. Okay, yes. But anyway, continuing.
Itself from falling into the Earth. Centrifugal force balancing.
Okay, so we know there is no centrifugal force. There's no such thing. There's no force that's Mr. Centrifugal Force. There's just the forces of gravity or the force of magnetism and those. There is no centrifugal force. So if something is moving around something else, it's not because of some centrifugal force or anything else that's holding anything together. It's always some sort of real force, like a string.
Gravitational force. So gravity was this action at a distance. Inverse square law. Farther away you go, the strength of the gravitational pull goes down as 1 over distance squared.
Right, and that's for a reason. And that the reason is because the r squared thing is basically saying something's spreading this way. That's r. And then this is r squared, okay? So when you take the two of them together, just means that when you're going somewhere and you're going somewhere in a divergent pattern, that is, you're spreading as the space spreads. It's probably not the best way to say it, but you're radiating, like little rays coming off the sun, you know, straight lines. They're going to diverge over distance. They're this close when they start, they get a little further apart, they get a little further apart, and they're doing that in 2 dimensions, and that's the inverse square law. So it's the same law for light bulbs, same law for this hand, okay? I have the distance 4 times bigger. Not twice as big, 4 times bigger. Alright, do a little pausing. Noise, creatures, and such. Alright, continuing and such. Probably.
Einstein came along, formulated the laws of relativity, and looked at them and said, my goodness, Newton's...
So, there really isn't that much connection between the idea of combining space and recognizing that there's some issue with velocity, you know, in terms of it affecting matter. You know, I can't even... the idea that you wouldn't just see the effects as effects, but assume there's some sort of relevance to time. So I'm just saying, if you really think about what Einstein's saying, light is a consistent thing in the universe, then you've already established that there's no time dimensions, because there's no, you can't change that the motion of the photons in the universe, you can't change how fast they're going relative in all positions, in all places at the same time. They're all photons moving the same speed. So you can't change the speed of the photons, so therefore how can you possibly change how long something takes to happen in any location, because basically the photons are going to decide how long it takes to happen. The photons are the energy for the system. So, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But this whole idea that something radical off of Newton, when all Newton said was there's a gravitational constant, okay, Einstein kept that. Newton said there's 2 masses in the equation. You know, I can't really do the math without the 2 things in the math. And the inverse square law. So Einstein didn't change any of that. He just added some other gobbledygook, you know. That's it. There's no changing of Newton. He didn't undo anything Newton did.
Laws of gravity are not compatible with my laws of special relativity.
So it's just a pile of crap. It's complete compatibility, and all he's saying is there's time is somehow relevant. And it's only relevant in ways that, unless it's only relevant if you're viewing images of reality rather than experiencing interactions with reality. So if you're actually interacting with something, you can't change the time. If you're interacting with images of it that are still in space somewhere, well, then you can change time in that sense. The only frames that matter in terms of being dilated by time are the frames that are just carrying information over distance. And it takes time for those frames to get from point A to point B. But so what? Who cares about interacting with images or sound files?
My laws that space and time are personal.
Yeah, so again, there's no personal. That's the whole point. So I think he actually says in this video later, there's nothing personal. So he's just a complete contradiction. So he's talking here about some sort of Einstein's theory that it's personal, and then he'll say later there's nothing personal about the fundamental laws. And that's the whole point. Yeah, there is nothing personal, because basically having a consistent speed of light means there's no There's no escaping now. Now is a real thing happening everywhere in the universe. Right now is happening right now everywhere in the universe. And the only thing that isn't happening right now are old images that you throw in a, you put some images in a bottle and you have them out in the ocean. Well, those images are a picture of what was, and they'll take a while to get to some place where somebody will look at them, but that has nothing to do with changing anything, and that's not a dimensional issue.
Laws that there is no absolute concept of simultaneity, and so you can't have.
So again, it's just more nonsense. Einstein never said that. It's again, I don't think he said that overtly. This idea again of what you perceive. Of course, you're going to perceive two events differently. Simultaneous events happen, and you're in some unbalanced position in space relative to those two simultaneous events. You'll obviously see the image of one later than you see the image of the other. But you'll see both images later than they actually happened. You'll see neither one at the moment it happened. You'll see it by some delay, and you're just increasing or decreasing the amount of delay. So what? You didn't change the events. So it's just more it's just more garbage.
Action at a distance, because action at a distance says simultaneous. This thing now creates a force here now. It's incompatible.
Right, again, and it wasn't Newton didn't posit. He didn't tell you, I know it's instantaneous. He just said, it looks like it. That's all he could say. He didn't know there was a speed of light. So this whole thing is just so stupid to sit there and say that somehow Newton should have wrote something different when he didn't have knowledge to write anything different. I mean, it's just disgusting to say that there's some incompatibility. There's no time factor in any of Newton's equations. So don't pretend he sit there and made an assertion he didn't make, or that his theory is dependent on understanding that precisely, because it's not. The basic truth is only enhanced by understanding, oh yes, it takes a while for gravity to move through space. It takes a while for light to move through space. Yes, you'll improve Newton's theory by understanding that, but you won't change any of it.
To create new laws of gravity. Obviously, I'm right. It had to be wrong. Einstein had chutzpah.
Oh, bullshit. And Einstein just got lucky in terms of the cards fell, the dice rolled to his advantage, and he got rewarded for bullshit. The whole Eddington fiasco.
And so Einstein then formulated general relativity as a new theory of gravity. He explained the gravity.
So again, it wasn't a theory of gravity because it had no function. So again, all it was a way to imagine gravity. It wasn't a theory of the function of gravity. It was exactly what Newton would have said. Yes, it's like there's a convergence. There's like it's a vacuum cleaner. Newton could have said these kind of words. I mean, he couldn't say vacuum cleaner, right? Because he didn't have a vacuum cleaner. But he could have conceptually given you a description like that. And if you would have said to him, well, it's like falling down a well, he would have said, yeah, it's like that. He would have said those things. So Einstein didn't add anything but visual rubbish. He added some imaginary visualizations that really aren't just like it. They're a little bit like it. That's all. Just a little bit. They're not just like it.
Gravitational pull in a different way. It was due to a warping of time.
Yeah, again, a warping of time. Gravity is not a warping of time. So again, it's just so fucking stupid. There's no evidence that gravity is a warping of time.
The prediction that time flows more slowly near the surface of the Earth than it does far away. And he was able to work through that through some four-dimensional geometry of space-time.
So again, and the only connection is that velocity is the thing that breaks clocks. So that's the other subject that shouldn't really be mixed with the gravitational subject. And the only connection they have is they're both accelerations. And as I've explained, what Einstein was basically trying to say was that all motion is the same, no matter its cause. So whether you're flying in a spaceship or you're being pulled in gravity, the motion is the same. When it's not the same, first, the causes aren't the same, but the way you're being moved is not the same. A rocket engine is different than how gravity imposes velocity, and the process of acceleration is fundamentally different than having velocity. So the fact that you can reach a balance condition once you have velocity, and the fact that the accelerating process is very rough on the matter, in the sense that it's going through a transition, and the transition is different than velocity. So those two things are different, and Einstein wanted to make velocity and acceleration into something that was the same thing when they're not the same thing. And as I've pointed out, it's quite obviously not the same thing in the sense that I'm right now going through a very large amount of acceleration. I'm accelerating down, and I'm accelerating back up, and I'm accelerating down because I'm getting pushed back by the Earth. So I am accelerating and decelerating. And I have a consequential velocity, each piece of me. So this is another part where physics has to recognize, and where it doesn't want to, or doesn't like it, that things aren't big things. The Earth and the Sun aren't interacting with the laws of nature. The elements of the Earth and the Sun are. The atoms, the electrons and the protons, and the force is what's interacting. And so you always have to understand, always the small universe is the first universe. So if you're going to explain a cause of an effect, you're going to eventually have to get to the micro universe to explain it, because that's where the origin of the event is. That's where the laws relevant to the event happened.
To explain gravity. So we had a completely different picture of gravity, that gravity is due to warping of space and time.
So it's not a completely different picture. It has the same basic concept in it, and all you're doing is saying, we know it's a pull, and it can't be a push. So you're basically saying something like that anyway. I mean, you could invert it in, some sort of inverted space. I don't know how you could do it, like with, create mountains and say it's the same percentages and the same slope arguments. So they're just using slope as a way of defining the inverse square law, and so they're just replacing the basic elements that are in Newton's equations with some other concept of a cause. So, as I just pointed out, light does the same thing, the inverse square law. So I can see light as little rays of force pushing in and pushing, and then we could just say, well, if I invert what a light's doing, that's a model of gravity. Now that would be a better analogy, wouldn't it? It's if you just said, well, imagine light is really shadow, okay, coming out of the light bulb, negative energy, and so the negative energy, pulled you. It's a tractor beam. That would be a better analogy, because at least it'd be more consistent to something three-dimensional, something that works in all three dimensions. Their two-dimensional bent space doesn't work as an image. It's non-functional in three dimensions. You can't bend three dimensions.
Which one is right? After all, Newton's laws give absolutely perfect, as far as we can see, predictions here in the laboratory.
So this is where this is supposed to be a scientist, and he knows perfectly well that Newton's laws are really good as a generalization, but the fact is you make them better when you add the speed of light. So when they realized that light had a speed, or could have, when they thought about that, and then they did the math, they found out the math works even better. It's even more precise. And this is all about gaining these little bits of precision. And then if you add to that knowledge that, well, gravity itself moves at that speed too, and then do the math, do Newton's math, adding the knowledge that gravity is also speed bound, the math gets even better. So it wasn't like, again, it was like Newton was just missing variables that have a tiny influence on outcome. Tiny. I mean, it's not really terribly relevant in most equations, the amount of difference it's going to make. The fact that your observation was a little bit off about the location. Like, say, when I see Venus, I'm not seeing it where it actually is. So I've mislocated it a little bit. So when I do the math, I have the wrong location down. And I can get that more precise. But the little bit of difference it makes for most equations that you're going to do for local equations, it isn't going to matter. Now, obviously, something billions of light years away, it could matter because your observation is way the fuck off.
Exceedingly accurate predictions in the solar system, not quite perfect. You do need a little bit of correction from general.
So let's understand, you don't need it from general relativity, you just need it from knowledge of the fact that the forces that are transmitting the interacting forces aren't instantaneous, and therefore they are slower than instantaneous. Therefore you haven't recognized accurately positions, and that if you do recognize that the actual position where it actually is rather than where you're seeing it, because you're seeing the past, fixes it. You don't need relativity to fix those big errors. Now, the precession of Mercury is another subject, but that just gets to the fact that what Einstein's math is basically doing is recognizing that the sun is also precessing. The sun is precessing. Its center of gravity precesses. And the things that are close to the wobble in the sun will feel the wobble more than things far away. So everything's being affected by that, but Mercury's the one being affected the most. So that was another tiny influence. So it's a tiny influence. Not a big one, not giant, it's just a tiny little difference. And the difference doesn't mean anything over distance. It's so tiny. So nobody realized that the Earth's orbit was a little bit off because we're not accounting for the fact that the sun's position is technically a little different.
But is gravity an action at distance, or is it warped space-time? Well, we say today, obviously.
So again, there's no reason to say Newton said it's action at a distance or it's spooky action or any of that crap. He just said, I don't posit an opinion, all right, because I don't have enough evidence to do so. So he was a good scientist. He did what a good scientist should do, which is, I can't tell you. I can speculate, I can talk about some stuff, I can see problems, some different theories, but I can't give you an answer because there isn't enough evidence for an answer. So he did the responsible thing, and this asshole is ragging on him for it. Implying that he did something wrong, when he didn't do anything wrong at all. He was just a tiny bit incomplete. That's it.
Warped space-time. And Newton's description is an approximation, but very good approximation. Today we have a problem that Einstein's laws of warped space-time must be married with the laws of quantum physics in order to discuss things like the birth of the universe and what goes.
No, anybody who wants to discuss the birth of the universe is so far ahead of any possible evidence they could collect that what's the point even talking to them? They're not trying to find the murderer. They're trying to find who their 15th time removed great-great-great-great-grandfather is or something. They're totally missing the objective here in terms of understanding the laws of physics. Forget it. Again, that crime happened so long ago. There are no fingerprints. There is no DNA. You're not going to be able to solve the crime.
Goes on inside black holes.
So more horse shit. Like, these are the important things. They still haven't figured out how a magnet works, and these idiots are going to tell me they do know how a black hole works. Yeah, sure you do.
These laws of quantum gravity, then, must be the fundamental laws that govern gravity, and somehow Einstein's laws of warped space-time must come out of them.
So we already have the laws. Newton gave you the laws, so those laws haven't changed at all. So this is just more horseshit. The laws of gravity haven't changed. It performs exactly like mock gravity. That's how it performs. Exactly like there's an external pressure, and you put two things in the external pressure that absorb the pressure proportional to their mass, and you'll see exactly what happens in gravity. Those laws are that simple. And the only flaw in that theory, again, is some notion about drag in other circumstances, moving through the universe somewhere else, or the planet would slow down because it's moving through a field of pressure. Those kind of arguments. And again, those arguments, I think, have been dealt with by me in pointing out that drag is real, and that if you want to understand velocity of objects, then you have to understand velocity in terms of nuclei being capable of moving. You have to find the smallest thing that's capable of moving perpetually through space. And the smallest material thing that can do that is an arrangement of electrons and protons. Not an electron, not a proton. An arrangement of them.
An approximation, and we actually, if string theory is the correct laws of quantum gravity, we do understand how Einstein's...
So this is more, so he's throwing string theory in here that has no coherent laws. I mean, none that you could write down on a piece of paper on a matchbook or something. It's this wacky kind of bullshit that the universe is made out of these rubber band things. So it creates all the push and pull mechanism by just saying rubber bands did it. So is it explaining how the rubber band works? No. So it's another non-answer to the question. You ask the question and they'll give you a non-answer. They'll tell you, well, there's rubber bands in the rubber band. That's what makes the rubber band rubbery. Rubber bands inside the rubber band. That's their answer. That's string theory.
Laws come out is an excellent approximation, but not really the truth. The truth is really string theory or laws of quantum gravity.
So more bullshit, or laws of quantum gravity, whatever that is. The truth is really some bullshit that we're going to make up in the future.
Gravity. What will come next? These laws seem to be nested. And you go from what...
There's no nested law. So again, he's saying that Einstein has a law. There's no Einstein laws. The laws already existed. The inverse square law is a law, okay, of how the force projects itself through the universe. It's not going to be broken. You're not going to find somewhere it doesn't work, all of that kind of crap, except when you have things really, really close to each other, because then you're essentially creating infinite planes, and the inverse square law no longer works because you're so close to the light bulb that you're getting all the light from the light. You can't escape. You don't have any more divergence issue because you're bigger than the divergence of the light. You're filling the entire 180-degree spectrum.
One to the next, as you go to higher and higher accuracy and greater domain of validity, you go from one to the next, from Newton to Einstein to string theory. Does it end there? I doubt it.
No. So again, does it end there? You haven't even gotten a there. So again, isn't that just such bullshit? To cite things that are rock solid and then throw string theory on there or quantum something or other, when that's the stuff that there's no evidence for. No laws are created by it. No new law is generated by their bullshit.
It could be that these are like nested Russian dolls.
So this is just more phantasmagorical, wishy-washy, mushy religion they're throwing in for free, right? Oh, here's not only my rotten science, my jumping the evidence, but now I'm going to speculate about all kinds of wonderful things that happen in heaven. So I haven't even accepted, did you have any evidence that your God exists, and now I have to accept the existence of your heaven? Oh, please.
That you have one, then another, but it goes all the way down to an infinite number of nests. All right.
So, and these are the people, like this guy was actually the Feynman honorary lecturer for Caltech, I guess. So when Feynman died, they created a scientist who had Feynman's name, essentially. And so this guy was the Feynman representative. So in defense of Feynman, Feynman would say exactly the opposite. Feynman would say, the truth might be that the whole thing gets really simple, checkerboard. And it's just that there's so much of it we're seeing the images of all the bazillions of checkers instead of seeing the actual checkers on the actual simple board. That it was all a simple process that created the complex structures. So Feynman knew, that that's a place to maybe look, where we're getting too lost in the the big stuff and not getting back to the little stuff. In the little universe, there are no new laws. No new laws have been found. They've only been made up, like entanglement. Still no real evidence that any such thing exists. The evidence still just indicates, yes, there are circumstances where you can create two photons, one of this polarization and one of this polarization at the same time. That's the only evidence there is.
It could be that string theory is the end. We don't know. I don't know. But having these three steps in front of me and having seen that the description of...
So he says there are three steps. Newton, Einstein, string theory. Those are steps. And he didn't even mention Maxwell. But, because mentioning Maxwell means you have to mention Ampere and, a bunch of other people. The G name guy, I can't remember, but Gauss. Gauss seems pretty important.
Gravity, like each of them, is so radically different from the other. I can't help but wonder if there isn't something at a finer scale yet.
So there's no difference in the real fundamental function. There's just difference in their with their images, and their images aren't coherent to reality. So bending space is not a coherent image for a scientist. A scientist should know it's impossible. There's no bending in 3 dimensions. You got to call it a convergence. It's a vacuum cleaner if it's anything. And then you have to explain where's the motor, and where's the dirt bag, and where's all the stuff that goes with creating vacuum cleaners.
That you keep on going down and there's never an end.
Is there a required spectrum from complexity to simplicity as you go down or uncover the nesting? Or is there anything that we can say structurally about this flow?
Right, so he's basically saying, is there some reason to doubt what Feynman said, which is the whole thing could be really, really simple at its root, and we just can't see the roots.
I'm not a great expert, but I am on the first two steps, not on the third. But when I step back as a physicist and look at it, I am struck by the power of demanding that you deal with laws that are simple in some sense. From the right.
Yeah, well, they're old. They're 300-year-old laws, so we already got the laws. We already figured out what magnets do. Okay, we figured out what they do, and from what they're doing, you can see that they're obeying certain rules and laws. So we define those already, because those are easy to find. The laws are easy to find. Why it's a law, that's the part. That's the part that that they need to look at, and they're not looking at the why is it a law question. They're looking for new laws.
My point of view. So Newton's laws are very simple when you think of actual distance. Einstein's laws are very simple when you think about warp space-time. You can reformulate
so again, they're really not very simple, because again, the simple law is, if you want to just argue the speed of light and the speed of gravity, well, yeah, those are simple laws. But the complex field equations that he had to write to account for the motion of the sun, in a sense, where I'm saying all he did was account for the precession of the sun, those aren't simple. Those aren't simple equations. Now, the law might be simple. I'm arguing it is. But those equations aren't a definition of a law.
Einstein's laws in a sort of a Newtonian sort of a way, they get awful complicated. And then you go to string theory. The string theory laws are they appear to be simple and elegant when you look at them from the right point of view.
Yeah, well, of course they're simple and elegant because they're just saying rubber bands make the rubber band rubbery. They're, so again, they're not dissecting function.
So simplicity is a touchstone in finding new physical laws. But simplicity combined with finding a radically new point of view, and it's not just simplicity itself.
So it is, though. It is simplicity itself, and that's where they just missed it, and they just didn't pick up on the obvious, and they made stupid declarations like Maxwell saying there's no magnetic monopoles, when it's obvious electrons and protons are magnetic monopoles. I mean, it's just stupid.
These aren't principles. These are guidelines in searching for new physical laws. The guideline of a combination of searching for new mathematical structures.
Yeah, what you don't need. What you need to understand is just the simple concept that there's two things functioning in the universe, force and matter, and they're two different things. One thing has all the motion, and one thing absorbs motion. It only gets it from a force. A force has to push it, move it. A force has to force it. So matter doesn't do something unless it's forced to do it. I could do without the car noise, probably. Yeah, probably. Alright, I'm back. Probably. Whatever.
In which you will be able to come up with simple laws, elegant simple laws, that explain the domain that you're moving into.
Right. So, and somehow you need some complexity to get to the simplicity. You don't. So again, the laws are really simple. I'm just arguing that I found a law that they missed, which is the function of charge. And once you understand why charge is charge, that is that there has to be two forces, and that's what's getting filtered by a magnet. That a magnet doesn't make any force; it just filters force. Just changes the direction, which ends up segregating the forces, which creates attraction and repulsion and explains it all. And the reason why gravity is different is because gravity doesn't have any polarity, and so it misses out on taking advantage of the strength of polarity. But anyway, simple laws. Simple. You're just missing. You're missing well, they're missing the obvious, which again, as I'm going to argue, light's a force. Everything's, all the stuff moving the speed of light is a force, and it's made of something. It's not nothing. It's a something. It's not a field that exists somewhere all the time and blah blah blah. It's a field that's made of something. And the field has to be there. And if something absorbs the stuff, if you put up a little hooker bar somewhere and all the soldiers go into the hooker bar, then you don't have any soldiers in your field anymore.
See an infinite number of these nesting. I mean, that seems impossible. I mean, I hate to say anything's impossible, but
an infinite number of ways of imagining. I mean, that's all. I mean, it's just we know the functions aren't that complicated. So again, it's an infinite number of what? New particles. Particles that we can't even define what their function would be in an atom. I mean, we already know the players. The players are the forces, magnetism, gravity, and magnetism, which is all the same force, just in different proportions of mixtures, and at a frequency, different arrangements of how it hits you. Very simple. And then you got the little matter bits, the positive and the negative matter bits, and they have this inverse relationship to the force. There. Now, I'm going to make an infinite amount of other things happening. No, you don't even need any subtle other players. You've already got all the players you need to complete the picture. There's no other players necessary. One kind of force bit that has two positive and a negative version, and two kinds of matter, a positive and a negative version. That's it. You're done. Finished. No infinite anything necessary. And I'm telling you, I can give you a description of the universe that will explain everything that happens with just that model. You don't need anything else.
You pick out any finite number. We have 3 potentially right now. And
well, the book that more than anything else.
So again, this they have all this crap, Copenhagen and many worlds and whatever, de Broglie magic and all. I mean, it's just all crap.
Made me a theoretical physicist. Convinced me at age 13 that this is what I wanted to do with my life. There's a book by George Gamow. His title was 1, 2, 3, Infinity. Maybe I'm influenced.
Yes, maybe you're influenced by reading religious books. That's right. Maybe Babel has just babbled your brain, and then the fact that everybody else is clinging to this crap. You're not very charismatic, to tell you the truth. I don't understand why people are at all enamored by this horse shit. It's just so bad. How did this guy become, one of the bishops? What?
It's by gamma.
Right.
But just having 1, 2, 3, I can't help but wonder if there isn't a 4, 5, 6 infinity. But
Well-
we don't know. We don't know. We're far.
Well, I'm just saying, I think there's no reason for them not to know. I mean, it does seem like everything is so rudimentary and fundamentally simple. Everything happens for simple reasons. It doesn't happen for anything complex reasons. It's just simple reasons. There's always just some simple reason. The bird lands on top of the boulder and it changes the center of gravity of the boulder. The boulder rolls down the hill. There's nothing complicated here. This is just such bullshit. We don't have ESP. We don't have magic powers. We don't have wings that pop out. We don't have anything to defend having this fancy bullshit explanation. Everything happens for just the crudest, stupidest of reasons. Your tire gets flat because the rubber ends up on the road over time and it gets thinner and thinner, or a nail pokes a hole in it. I mean, the rules aren't that complicated.
Far from knowing.
You know, it's they say that any finite number is irrational. It would be irrational because why that finite number? Infinity sort of has its own charm to it. One would have a charm.
Yeah.
You know, none would have a charm also. But any finite number would be hard.
Again, it's more horseshit because we know that it's just a limitation of our imagination. So as soon as I put a million things in front of you, you can't understand the individuals anymore. They're lost in the millionness. To understand the millionness, you lose all the detail, and that's just the rule. So what? The limitation on our perception, therefore we have to create a magic verse, a wooiverse. No.
But of course, we're now getting into philosophy that at this stage in our understanding of physics isn't terribly.
So let's understand, this stage is they still are paying no attention to why magnets work. They can't do any better than, virtual photony thing. Why is there gravity? Well, there's this bent geometry thing. Bent geometry thing. They got nothing.
helpful. And so this is a philosophy that I'll talk about usually over beer, not usually on camera.
Sure.
But
Yeah, clearly, but we'll clearly see the effects of your wacky verse bullshit in the sense that you're a science advisor for a movie that has that completely bastardizes science, all the sciences. Like I said, it's not like they got one science wrong in that Interstellar movie. Every single bit of the movie was an affront to scientific fact.
For a physicist, this is an intriguing question, but we're not at a point where we have any way to come to grips with it. And so it's a question that we set aside, and we just focus in at this stage on understanding quantum gravity and string theory.
So just we should understand the most obscure, the silly, we should understand the multiverse. No, you should understand how a magnet works. Fuck. I mean, it's just so fucking upside down.
And then fleshing out on our understanding of relativity and warped space-time. And
yeah, just more bullshit again, and the fact that this relativity word is used to describe Einstein's thing, when of course there's relativity. Of course you're not in between two objects. You're closer to one than you are the other. Of course that exists. There's a relative position to things, all right, but there is no relativity towards the basic laws of physics. There's no relative law of physics. There's just laws. And again, that's the irony of what Einstein said. Einstein's basically saying photons are not relativistic. It just doesn't matter where you are. They're always doing the same thing. So there is no relativity in that sense, because that rule just basically tells you every part of the universe is experiencing the universe. It's not experiencing some different verse.
let future generations, when the subject's mature enough, when our understanding is mature enough, let future generations develop.
Yeah, when you're mature enough. It doesn't have anything to do with the subject. It was very mature in how it was processing. Like I said, Newton as an example of what science should be is a great example. careful, deliberate, meticulous, even detailed, all of that stuff, all the good things. There you had it. Even Maxwell, not as careful as I would be, but frankly careful. And and then they just said, fuck doing real physics anymore, fuck being scientists, we'll just go with wacky speculation.
Tools to ask in a definitive way, is there a fourth layer and more?
What is exciting is the emergence of the previous layer from just flowing logically out of the elegance of the more fundamental layer.
That's
So again, he's basically saying it's a different view of reality, and then he says, well, yeah, we're just realizing that there's this foundational progression and that the stuff they figured out earlier is right, and we're going to build on that right stuff. I mean, it's just so funny when they're not doing anything like that. There's no appearance of Newton's simplicity in Einstein's complexity. I mean, it's just ludicrous to say so, that one is a version of the other, in the sense that no, because Einstein threw in some catches that are preposterously stupid.
one of the keys to finding the more fundamental layer. The previous layer has to flow out of it. It must flow out, hopefully elegantly. If it's elegant, then as a rough rule of thumb, you're on the right track.
So, and whatever that means. So they're saying it's an elegant solution to, say, bent space, when you're using gravity to explain gravity. Falling down a well. There, you've explained gravity, when the only way falling down a well works is because of gravity. So no, none of this is elegant. Elegant in that you evaded the question. Okay, yes, string theory is really elegant if you want to invade the question of where the tension comes from in the universe. The tension between force and matter. The tension between ping pong paddles and ping pong ball. If you want to make that more understandable, oh no, instead turn the ping pong ball into paddle and ball, and then turn the paddles into paddle and ball. No, then it won't work at all.
I love the word elegance, and I must ask you to enrich our...
Yes, enrich us with what that means to you, which means, the play has a good theme and a story. Yeah, I mean, science is no fun if you don't have a good Star Trek episode, or, Star Wars, conflict, and the dark force, the light force, until you turn it into something emotional, that we can get emotional about. That's elegance.
Our understanding of how to describe that word in physics. From a physicist's point of view, what's elegant?
Precise and accurate would be really cool if those were the definition. Clean. Really clean. Something that doesn't have any crap in it. No bullshit. No woo. Simple. Reliable. Well evidenced. That's really elegant. I bet you that won't be his answer.
So let me describe it by talking about two different people. Subramanian Chandrasekhar was a great astrophysicist, a close friend of mine, and for him...
Yeah, it sounds like he's some kind of guru.
The elegance was in the equations that sit on a piece of paper. He could look at them and he could say, these are elegant, they must represent truth. You could look at another set of equations.
Yes, and this set of equations, to use Einstein as an example, E equals mc squared. There, that's elegant. Okay, it just points out that there's energy in the matter. Yes, there's force trapped in there, and you can make it come out of there, even though he didn't say that.
And he could say, that really looks ugly. That can't represent truth. I've never understood how he had such great contributions to science, but he saw it in the mathematics on the sheet of paper.
So a guy I've never heard of had a great contribution. Okay, says you.
On the other hand, Stephen Hawking sees it.
Complete bullshitter, another guy in fantasy land. Talking about things, complete abstractions, where there's a bunch of assumptions made about how infinite the infinite well can be, when you haven't established there's an infinite amount of force. So how do you project the existence of infinitely deep wells when you don't have infinitely deep earth to dig them in?
All in geometric shapes in his head. Of course, he can't write equations on the paper. Hasn't been able to since the mid-'70s because of his motor neuron disease. But he developed these tools to think about physical law in geometric forms, manipulating shapes and topologies in his head. For him, elegance is all in the...
So that's all mushy talk too, because I don't know how much of that he did in terms of formalizations. Again, formulas are a bunch of symbols, and symbols represent other symbols. That's what deriving equations is just recognizing that sine theta is the same as lambda divided by under these circumstances. So if I don't violate the circumstantial rules, I can replace this with that, and blah 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 blah.
These shapes and these topologies. I don't think there's any uniformly agreed on idea of what elegance is.
Right, so then why did you say it? Why are you, as a scientist, using things for which there's no agreement? That's exactly the opposite of the precision needed in the scientific process. The whole point of the scientific process is to shore things up, not to sloppy things up.
But, well, it's you know it when you see it, at least.
Great. Yeah, that's very scientific.
Oh, it's a personal elegance in some sense.
Yes, so it's all just more personal crap.
So, though there certainly is a pretty universal agreement that general relativity is elegant, that quantum theory...
So again, elegant when you create paradoxes. So paradoxes are, in my opinion, the opposite of something that's elegant as a machine. A machine that creates paradoxes is not a good machine. A model that creates paradoxes is not a good model.
Is not yet elegant as it should be.
How about the word beauty? Is beauty and elegance the same thing? In common parlance, they're not.
I think, again, it depends on the physicist.
So why are they even playing with these silly, undefinable words? Why are they playing with words that don't mean? Why don't they just talk about freedom? Words that are stupid shouldn't exist.
For Chandrasekhar, beauty and elegance are equivalent. I think for me, looking at physical laws, that's also true. That's not true in everyday life, but it is.
Yeah, it's not true, because his vision of everyday life is some bullshit that I'm entangled with this battery here somehow. Somehow we're instantaneously knowing each other's existence through the magic of the entanglementers. Bullshit, wooey crap.
It's true for physical law.
So how much does a search for elegance and beauty affect you when you're doing the physics of relativity, black holes?
So the search...
So all you got is the search for facts, evidence. That's it. There's just evidence. That's all there is. There's facts. You establish as facts, and then you combine the facts to connect the dots, essentially. There's rules to dot connecting. And the rule is, you don't make up the fucking dots. You wait till you have enough evidence to put the dot there and say, I'm going to connect that there. They're making dots. They're not connecting dots.
For elegance and beauty has been crucial in finding new laws of physics.
So again, these new laws, what I wish they would recite all their new laws. The law of neutrino power, the law of the positron, the law of the, what law, what rule, what function does any of this crap have?
In a crucial sense, Einstein playing a crucial role today. I have chosen not to go that route with my career. I prefer to work in a field where I have elbow room, and that's much more.
Yeah, and he's regarded as a scientist. He wants the elbow room to go complete phantasmagorical and forget about all those fucking. I don't want to deal with this inverse square law. Yeah.
Crowded field than I do. So I have chosen to probe relativity, warp space-time myself. In this case, it is still true that searching for
And again, let's understand, he's a specialist in this bizarre, eccentric speciality, and he can't even get the rules of that right, in the sense that he makes a movie that just violates the fundamental rule, which is you can't time dilate without being either having insane velocity or going through, to get insane velocity, insane acceleration. And that no people could ever, in any time, in any place, ever in the universe, transport themselves between two frames that have dramatically different time dimensionality, if I have to use their language. So if two places have fundamentally different time dimensionality, there's no way you could go from one to the other without having to dramatically decelerate or accelerate. No way to do that. Absolutely no physics that makes that make any sense at all. And yet he made it the foundation of his science advising movie making, violating a fundamental law.
Elegance in the description of something in relativity, such as a black hole, is an important thing to do, because
it pays your salary and it sells books, and you just have to keep telling people it's really important to know how black holes work. It's not important to know how a magnet works. Magnets are dumb and stupid and lazy and boring. Black holes are exciting and fun because, of course, because we all know the story of the black hole and the three little black holes and the three blind black holes. And we know all those, it's so critical to our whole culture. How could we possibly do anything without black holeology? Magnets? Fuck that. That doesn't do anything. That's like motors and stuff and electricity and generators. Who cares about that shit? That shit isn't important to you. No, black holes are important. This is so fucking idiotic. Why do I even have to make this video? This is just so fucking idiotic.
Intuition, being able to guess things before you compute them, and then know what to compute in terms of a prediction.
Right. Predict your own. I predict my own fame in discovering the hemoglobin, because I invented it and I created it and I imagined it, and so therefore it exists because I did all those things. I imagined it, so it must be real.
Is that how black?
And I'll give you a formula for it. And yes, of course, it has hemoglobin, derivatives in it all over the place, of course, because it has to have little rubber bands to make the big rubber band, of course.
Behave when they collide. That physical intuition has to be based on some mental pictures that, in order for them to really be easy to manipulate, it's best that they be elegant. So, in my sort of poor man's area of physics, instead of trying to understand to understand new laws of physics, elegance is still important.
Sorry, neurons are just revolting entirely. They're saying, I can't do this anymore. I cannot sit and think in this retarded universe. This retardiverse. I can't live here anymore. Oh, sorry. I'm just having an episode. Fuck you people for letting this happen. Fuck you. Yeah. This should not be. There's no good reason for this crap. Fuck you people. I'm going someplace else. Yeah, that's it. I don't have a home to speak of.